Evening, guys. Thanks for joining us. Every week that people are required to stay in their homes more, I keep thinking everyone is just getting more and more sick of the internet. So when we sign up to do these things, I'm always excited to see who comes on, and I'm on mute. I'm not sure if that's real, but if that's a funny comment to try and get me to stop talking, it's definitely funny. Anyway, we keep thinking people are getting more and more sick of the internet, so we're hesitant to do more and more of these things. But they're useful. We get good feedback on them, and if at any point they become more annoying than helpful, the people that actually like us on here, we expect you to tell us. I wanted to start tonight with a little more of our origin story. A lot of you have heard us talk about hardcore. And that's something that I started out really young in, just got lucky. Really, the same magazine that introduced me to BMX bike riding introduced me to bands that I never would have seen otherwise, and I jumped right down the rabbit hole. Hardcore taught, amongst a host of other things, value in adversity and acceptance of diversity. The adversity side of things was everything in the entire equation. How the shows went, where they were, what happened at them, what happened after them, and also the cast of characters that made them up. I became extremely familiar extremely early on in my life with people that had done really bad shit, adjusted themselves, and turned themselves into great people. Maybe not great people by, conventional standards or, the I don't know, Forbes 500 list or anything like that, but great people that were doing good things and trying to be the best people they could possibly be after coming back from some trip-ups and some mistakes. That's been a common thread my entire life. I know a lot of people that have had a lot of trouble, and one of the ways that I judge people is what they do after, not what they've done before. Some things you do not get a free pass. Some birds should just not be allowed to fly. Not everything is forgivable. But most things are, and most things are improvable. And I don't know that I want to know anybody that hasn't made some mistakes that have become an integral part of their current character. Because then I think it's just kind of a house of cards. You got to have a foundation for that stuff. Hardcore really introduced that to me in a pretty profound way at a really early age. And amongst a million other things, I thank it for that. What that has led us to now is that I can be around any type of person, anytime, no matter what. And I do, and I have. If someone's had trouble in the past, and I see what they're doing now is positive, or what they're trying to do for others is positive, or what they've turned themselves into is something more than what they were, that's great. I'm their biggest fan right away. I don't care what that person looks like. I don't care what they do. I don't care what job they have. And then the other thing that snuck in early with hardcore is it's not like there was some diversity drum being beaten, because it just wasn't necessary. If someone was being targeted, you protected them. If someone was being taken advantage of, you came to their aid. That's it. There was no, in the way that we looked at it, in the way that we handled it, there was no variables there. So when I think about some of the things that target us now, some of the things that I'm accused of, some of the things that I'm called, I'm always critical of how that may have unfolded. And I think part of it is that I don't scream from the rooftops about every different type of thing, because I just don't find it important. it's a component of my character that's been so obvious in everything that I've ever done that I really just don't think that entertaining the low-hanging fruit by shouting it off the rooftops every day is a valid strategy. As I've said before, I've made my life my protest. So tonight we're going to talk about a few things that have been challenging for us. Then we'll tie it up answering some great questions. There's a handful of them in there. And then we'll talk about Convergence last weekend, which occurred here in Rochester, New York, and was phenomenal. So last Thursday, Rogue dropped our maces. Didn't tell us. Our customers had to tell us. I communicated with them immediately. No response. Continued to try on Friday. No response. Late Friday, I received an email from Rogue Legal. Nothing really all that fascinating in there. I had to poke and prod because it's a big deal. Having an exclusive distributor for something like what we do, dump you without notice, is rough. The note that I got on Friday said that we are not compatible with the Rogue brand. I don't necessarily disagree with that statement. However, it's not appropriate in the context it was used. Just to give a history on a few things, I've worked in distribution, both sides of the equation. I've run little brands and worked with little brands that have been distributed since I was a kid. My only real job ever in California was running a giant BMX distribution company. And within that distribution company, which was very, very big, and I had a really long rope to hang myself with, and I used every inch of it that I could to bring brands that I knew and friends of mine into the fold, cultivate them, help develop them using the money that this giant company had. And it was very successful. One thing that I know, because we had experience with this on both sides of the equation, positive and negative, is that if we had dumped any of those brands early on in the game, or when they least expected it, or during a period of growth, or during a period where they had really killed it for us, it would have been detrimental to them. To do so without notice is not only potentially detrimental, but in my opinion, because there are so many other ways to handle it, it shows malicious intent. It shows ill will. To do so in the exact climate that we're in right now is especially fascinating. And just a quick history with Rogue. I'd been in contact with them early on in their, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, development, I guess. It was when they were new. They hadn't really even developed yet. I had run an idea or two by them back in 2009. And then in mid-2017, I finally figured out that we could make our ideal mace. So I got back in touch, and in mid-2017, they began selling the maces. It went slow at first. Of course, the mace is kind of an obscure tool, and most of the people that use it don't use it heavy or well. And so we really kind of had to redevelop kind of a little niche for ourselves. And we did, and we chopped away at it, and it started improving and went better all the time. And then we had a couple of surges. A couple people would use them in the greatest ways and show people, and we had some good surges that way. And then the last 6 months has been interesting. Well, that could be the understatement of the century. But the mace sales were going well. And then when quarantine started, Rogue reached out to their vendors and asked who was going to have supply chain issues. I kind of calibrated and thought and said, well, you know, we have supply chain issues now, so what's pushing a little harder going to do? And so I responded, we're not going to have supply chain issues. We're going to have the same 7 to 14 day lead time. Most of the time during this couple of years, we had never used that. We would have stuff on hand and ship it quickly. But I knew that if we could push it out to that 14 days, we could make a lot of maces. So they let people know that we did not have supply chain issues and people bought maces. I think a lot of them started looking at what we were doing. Some of the views on what we had done were going up quite a bit. And we were just pleased to be able to get a tool to someone that we love and that we think is the best in the world, and let people use it at a time when everyone needs every advantage they can get from a training standpoint. So we kind of killed it when it came to providing training tools during the quarantine. During that same period of time, Jocko put the mace on his Instagram. Last year, one of our great people here facilitated getting Jocko a mace, and lo and behold, a couple months ago, it snuck onto his Instagram with a tag to us. So those couple of things really spiked some mace sales. We were selling an awful lot of maces, and it was a gigantic amount of work. We are small. When I say we're small, I'm not fronting. I'm not trying to play pauper or anything like that. We're small because we're small. We're small because we prioritize quality. We don't have a ton of members. These maces cost a lot of money to make here in Rochester, and that's it. I wish I was better at business on that side of things, but I'm not. So the arrangement that we have is that I prepay for all the maces, and they would pay us after we invoiced them, after we shipped the maces. So a surge in sales was a gigantic challenge for a lot of reasons. Financially, for sure. Logistically, for sure. They're all hand finished and hand etched, and Heather stepped up and killed it and did a ton of great maces. Every single mace looked great. So we kept up, we stayed up, we were doing a great job. And in those 2.5 years, we had 0 defects. So the total at this point, we sold almost 1,200 maces, which is incredible to me. I thought we were going to sell about 12 maces. 0 defects, 0 quality control issues, 2 missed ships, which was a mutual fault, and a product integrity that it would be hard to find in too many places these days. So when it comes to non-compatibility, I understand what they mean, but they don't mean what they think they mean, or what they think I think they mean. My question is also, if we are not compatible with a brand like Rogue, what does that say? What does that say about you? What does that say about a lot of people that look at what we do and enjoy it or value it or something like that? I don't know the answer to that, but it's an interesting question. So once we heard that we were gone, we had to pivot very quickly because they also knew that we had Convergence last weekend. I'd been in contact with people in purchasing and people in accounting that week, and it was well known that we were in the midst of throwing an event. So we had to pivot quickly. The maces are on our site direct now, which is great, with a flat shipping rate, which is not great for us, but we're going to figure it out. We just wanted to make sure that the product was available. And again, just to reiterate, everything that I just said is a very simple fact. And I believe that the contribution to us getting bounced with no notice that I made was maybe two things. I wrote an open letter to CrossFit affiliates and ex-affiliates and participants a couple of weeks ago after I think the former CrossFit CEO, Greg Glassman, prioritized his ego over like 12,000 affiliates. did whatever he wanted, said whatever he wanted. And since I've been in a position where CrossFit wronged us, I could at least commiserate with what some of these people were feeling, what they were thinking about, maybe even give some guidance on plans for what's next based on how long we've been training people and running this sort of facility. So I wrote that letter. It was factual. It was not mean-spirited. But I don't think it won me any points with anyone in those camps. And the only other thing that I could consider would even be on the radar is when all that same stuff transpired, I sent Bill from Rogue a little note, knowing some of the stuff that Glassman was kind of doing, and just made a very open-ended offer that if I could help with any of that stuff, I believe I could do a great job at ensuring that we continue to give people great tools and great information. And that was it. I could see that rubbing someone the wrong way if they were sitting on the lap that was reading it. But anyway, to drop a tiny brand like ours with no notice, it requires, what do we want to call it? Strong feelings. There was, if this was a roundtable discussion with diplomats, that's not how they would have handled it. Notice is how people usually handle it. I think strong feeling like that deserves maybe a better outlet than like faceless cowardice. So I thought of this. Bill, why don't you and I fight at the Arnold's next year? We know people that orchestrate and execute things like that, and I've already spoken with them. They're on board. I will accept the fight under any rule set that any martial art in history has ever used. You want to start handcuffed, blindfolded in opposite ends of the ring? I'm in. You want to start with a baseball bat with me unarmed? I'm in. And it's a ways off. You've got enough money. You can get some great training in that time. I'm positive of it. And that will give you at least a snowball's chance in hell. Though that's about it. Anyone listening knows that this will never happen, but they also know that this just happened, and that is a fact. If we have challenges in front of us, we do not hide. We hunt them. We either want to help or hurt, and we want to know which we're doing and why. That's it. Let's get a couple questions, then we'll move on. Let's see, we'll start with Sev. Don't see much barbell on Wolf Brigade programming. Would love to know why. Okay, well, so that's actually wholly inaccurate. What you may mean is you don't see a lot of barbell lifting on the Wolf Brigade Instagram. That's true. We don't put a ton on there because it's almost everything that everyone else does. We lift barbells well, often, heavy, every week, 3-4 times a week even. We cycle through the primary lifts, we use percentage-based assessments, and we insulate and improve the primary barbell lifts with kettlebells and maces differently and better than anyone else ever has. So if you're looking for what's actually in our programming, wolfbrigade.com, there's programs for many, many years, and Subversive Fitness, our new portal, has much more current programming as well as some supplemental stuff that's barbell, kettlebell, mace, body weight. So, good question, but there is tons of barbell stuff there, and I think what you meant is we don't display it a lot in our social media. 100% guilty as charged. although with how well our people move, it's fun to watch all the time. Most people do barbell stuff, so it's not our priority. It's not our priority to show. And next, why the name Wolf Brigade? Well, I stole it from a band in Sweden that I've liked since I was a kid. And strangely, I emailed them about it like maybe 6 months prior to moving back to Rochester. I emailed when I was still in California. Someone wrote back something really simple. It was really, just a kind, simple message saying, great, kick-ass, whatever. I was a fan of the band, so it's not like I was writing with any sort of ego or preconceived notion or anything like that. So anyway, simply stolen from a band and stolen from a great band. And no question, hello from Sweden. Jeez, that's funny. Hello, Thomas. Thank you, man. That was funny. Say hi to Wolf Brigade. Okay, not too strong, but interested in training and working into martial arts. Starting point. Nick, okay, man. So in a lot of eyes, ours included, not a lot of training also means no bad habits. So start out with great detail. It doesn't have to be with us, but it somewhere detailed is a great choice, and somewhere casual is not a great choice. The better you build the foundation, the easier and stronger you're going to build everything else. The only time we have trouble with people really is when they come in with such broken patterns or movement dysfunction that we have to undermine everything that would be actual progress for rebuilding. It's still possible. We still do it all the time, and it works almost all the time. But it just adds another couple steps to the process. So if you can stay current and ahead of the curve, just work in detailed ways, the way that we consider it is a global linear progression. You always want something to be moving forward. It doesn't necessarily have to be one specific lift. It doesn't even necessarily have to be one specific implement or style or anything like that. But keep things moving forward. And start on the best feet you could possibly find. You could do far worse than our remote program. If you've got a great place in your area, just check them out. And if they seem legit, they probably are. And if they seem like bullshit, they almost certainly are. Good question. And we'll take any other questions that you guys have in the comments instead of these little boxes. I'm not great at these yet. Thanks. Here's a good one. What equipment is needed for remote development? I mean, it's tough to say anything or nothing and sound sincere about it, but that is really almost true. Nothing is not ideal because a lot of the training is it's based in energy systems. It's based in either strength or power or conditioning or power endurance or dexterity or whatever the case is. So the more thorough your tools, the easier it's going to be to apply what we're offering, but it certainly is not a prerequisite. You have to have something medium, you have to have something heavy, and you have to have something light. But that can be almost anything. One of the things that we hammer a lot and we do pretty well is keeping the implement as interchangeable as possible. Of course, everything has nuance and has to be practiced very specifically, but when you've got a good pattern, a good timing, good energy systems, and most important, great midline stability, everything seems together quite nicely. So the only odd thing that I think the remote development calls for a lot that a lot of people still don't have, although far more have it than we would have ever expected, is a mace or a hammer. But yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, and that's really it. Outside of that, just basic tools that you can get, and please ask questions if you have them, when you have them. Hey Brian, what is the best exercise to build up mace strength and proficiency for swings? Yeah, so more of the same. The mace moves so differently that everything helps it and it helps everything else, but very few things specifically help it. We've seen some absolutely animalistic folks come in that simply could not get their heads around the mace. Maybe it may have been more than that, but part of it was at least mental. And really what it takes is just getting a familiarity and a conditioning with that lateral movement. Things are used to going in straight lines, especially training and especially barbells. So when you start moving things off axis, there are physical demands, there are psychological demands there. So with us, the way that we insulate for mace lifting is mace lifting and also adding holds and fact checks and things like that. So like, for example, the front pendulum plus extension. The front pendulum swings very close to you. The weight comes up underneath your arm and it stays close the entire time. At the end of a designated set, we'll take it, broaden your chest like you're bench pressing, and then press your arms out like you're bench pressing. And then we'll start a count of a hold at the end. So if it's mace front pendulum plus extension, might be 10 reps, 10 1,000 hold, and we're back and we're moving. Learning to control that rotational weight, building that midline stability to control the rotational weight is really the only way to control the rotational weight. And so that's the other reason that we implement a lot of back pendulums before we ever have anyone push a 360. The 360 is easier than the back pendulum, but it's also far riskier if you don't know you've got range and proficiency back there. So the back pendulum lets us know that everything is moving in a straight line, lets us know that there's no mobility issue that's going to cause a problem if someone just shoves that thing to the side a little bit wrong. And so just like everything else, you build in an organized way, and then you're able to kind of predict what you should expect. So better mace lifting, better holds, really, really detailed positioning. And when I say better, I don't mean that as an insult to anyone. I mean constantly try and improve the nuances of what you're learning. Until you've been doing something for 10, 15, 20 years, and there's so much muscle memory that you can almost just autopilot things except for the highest level stuff. Go back to the absolute beginning every single day. I do that now with almost everything that I do, and I believe it's served me well. Hopefully that got you where you were going with that question. So look, we got a new one. We've got a hello. That's nice. Sorry, there we go. From Chris, what would I say helped me the most for grappling sports in regards to training? So I have, I think, an okay perspective on this because I do have a before and after. So I've been training for quite a while before finding the mace. I always give Jake Shannon credit for that. He was the first one to really make any type of commercial platform for the mace here in America. Once I found that thing, it's really like game changing. It really felt to me like grappling, but with a strength sports component. So I just started detailing that thing out, and that was kind of my mission after that is, okay, there's this great tool. It's got this amazing tradition. Clearly the function is so obvious, but there hasn't been a ton of standards put into it. And that was something that I was big on. And now, of course, I'm a little bit bigger on. So started dissecting the mace and adding details to that thing. And I think that is and was the best transfer to grappling sports for me. A lot of the kettlebell positioning we do was also kind of predicated on getting the best out of that realm. Things that transfer to martial arts. So some of the grips we've used that we've figured out more recently, 5, 6, 7 years. But then also the fact that we would even early on use much, much heavier kettlebells than most people because, one, the barbell was not always our ideal tool. We didn't always move best in those positions. And two, we felt that the odd object would transfer better to grappling. So that's kind of a simple answer to a question that could kind of go all day. Thank you. I'm so glad you guys are liking the maces. I mean, so do we. I'm sold. And I think one of the only negatives of any of that, one of the only downsides of the way that we present things with kettlebells and maces is getting relegated into a kettlebell or a mace program. And I think that's the most fascinating thing, because our people lift barbells so well. At any given day, everyone in that room is moving like a competitive power lifter. At any given day, someone is power cleaning like someone that is practicing that for the Olympics. And the reality is the kettlebell and the mace stuff is what enables that to happen. No one in there is lifting world-class weightlifting numbers, and it doesn't matter. It's definitely not our point, but the mechanics are our point. The function, eliciting max function from that lift is our point. So, and we've got a couple of armchair philosophers in here. We're going to leave those out. And from Scott, recommended exercises, sets, rep ranges for those returning to fighting. Well, I mean that's a complicated question. It depends what capacity you lost the most of in the past few months. For most people, it's going to be their conditioning. Well-built strength doesn't stay forever, of course, but it stays a good long time. Power endurance, baseline conditioning, those things go quick. So if you haven't been training for the past few months, our recommendation would be almost like you started training again from scratch, which is build a very specific strength foundation, use a lot of detail, prove that detail with weight, but don't let the weight break position. And then get some good, hard, short stuff in. Low risk stuff though, especially if you've had things break down. Like if your midline feels different, if your breathing feels different, then I believe the simplest is the best. Minimum effective dose for sure. So rebuild your strength foundation, and then find something like an Airdyne that is extremely high reward, extremely low risk, and smash yourself on that thing with some sensible sets. For pure Airdyne, I believe a Tabata interval is one of the most effective things on an Airdyne, and that's not a Tabata class or anything like that. That's not a thing. There's not a Tabata class. The scientist that concepted Tabata is phenomenally detailed and extremely effective, and it's one interval. It's 4 minutes, 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest for 8 rounds. And the goal is to absolutely annihilate yourself in those and just rest enough to get a little bit back and then do it again. Almost like fighting can be. So simple recommendations. Of course, there's deeper water there, but refill whichever tank is the most empty. And that'll help you get back into martial arts effectively. Don't break the toys though, because then you'll have nothing to play with. Best food, yeah, that's right. That's right. In Airdyne, we never win. The stronger we get, the worse it gets. Hi, thanks. How to get a mace in Mexico or an estimate date? Yeah, thank you. God. Yeah, yeah, his last name was Tabata. Yeah, how easy is that? International maces. Yeah, I've missed the boat on this a little bit. I've tried it several times. It's a little over my head as far as both time and detail. And I've worked with shipping agents and stuff before, but this is a little bit different because there's not going to be a lot of these at once. And shipping pallets of something or everything is a lot different than shipping one mace or 2 maces or 5 maces. It's definitely something we are so interested in. We've had so many requests from so many places. If there was a glass half full on the Rogue situation that we talked about a little while ago, it's that we're going to be able to detail out some stuff that we didn't previously have any leverage to do. I mean, we quite literally made nothing on the maces we were selling from Rogue, and the reason we did it is because it offered a way better price for you guys. Our shipping is 3 to 4 times what Rogue's is, and it's not because we're upcharging it. It's because they ship $10 million in bumper plates every 2 minutes. So if there was a glass half full to that, it's that we're going to be able to retool some things with the Maces, and international is top on the priority list. Right at this very moment, I don't have a good answer for you. People are talking about San Diego. There's a lot of sense to that. I would be really careful about what you try and do with that right now. But as soon as that is plausible, we will do it, and it's definitely nothing that we've meant to sleep on. We want Maces. We want Maces in the hands of anyone that wants them. The fact that people want the Mace that we're making is super fun, and I've tried not to lose that in the pretty gigantic discouragement of the last couple of weeks, but it is not lost. Geez, please speak about kids BMX. I don't know. How long do you want to talk? I mean, if parents put their kids in a martial art and an action sport right now, I believe the world will be changed in 15 years. I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, or if you were talking about Dan teaching Todd's kids how to jump a ramp over the weekend, but that was also equally awesome. So let's talk about positive things now. Convergence. We pulled off an event last weekend. Not really quite sure how that happened. It was phenomenal. It was very telling. I mentioned this a little bit at the event itself. We always look at how someone leaves. We've had people walk in our door in any manner of state. The worst I've ever seen to the best I've ever seen. And that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. How you walk in doesn't matter. It's how you walk out. And what we saw was some of the communication from people that just straight up couldn't get here. They had registered, they had paid, they were excited. Some of the stuff that people were trying to do, some of the lengths that people were going to try and get to Rochester, New York during a fucking pandemic is remarkable. It's remarkable. It tells me an awful lot at a time when we really need to hear it. We've been attacked a lot in the last 6 months, and I've been attacked a lot for a lot longer than that. And my capacity to endure discouragement is significant. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't accumulate. And things like that help it level back out. So besides the people that sent remarkable stories about why they couldn't get there, many still did. And in the same way that I've been watching our group in the last few months continually outperform themselves with more detail and more intensity and more laser focused violence of action, I saw tenfold again at Convergence. People feel like they're earning everything right now. Even the things that they've taken advantage of before, taken for granted before. Now there's a premium on it. And it's visible when you come into something like training with people who actually care about what they're doing. It was incredible to watch. People that I've seen move before were moving better. That's a combination of detailed training and deliberateness. And it was also a byproduct of environment. As is often felt in our room, there was a palpable intensity in there that did not lift for the entire weekend. I couldn't create that on my own. It was incredible. Very many progressive things happened. Everyone progressed, whether it was in a lift, whether it was in a detail, whether it was in a mindset, whether it was in a friendship. And I believe that the people who made it out to this will have something additional to remember it by by the absolutely insurmountable challenges that they probably face in getting there. So we want to thank them again. We'll do another event sometime sooner than next year. We're trying to figure out what it is. We're trying to figure out where it's going to be. It'll probably be in Rochester, but we're not 100% set yet. And so if you have any suggestions on any of that, I see what some of you are saying right now, and thank you so much. We would entertain who's, what's, where's, how's. We're not auctioning off an event. We just want to run a few more things before Convergence next year for people to make it to, and so that we can make right with some people that very graciously let us keep their Convergence money. I mean, we've learned an awful lot about people in the last few months, that's for sure. This whole situation has been truth serum for a lot of stuff. And very few have risen to the top. Very few have stood out in positive ways, and we're very fortunate to know some of them. The last training thing we'll talk about, I've been thinking about it in my mind as the full effort phenomenon. For years now, many people have misunderstood the training that we put together because they'll try a day here or try a day there and it doesn't really land. And they come back and they say, well, you know, it's just not enough. It's not enough. It's you know, there's not 350 power cleans at 19 different weights with a 250 box jump for time at the end. And it's hard to explain to them that what is being missed is the effort. Exclusive focus on the finish leads to fault and failure in the process. So, when you add in the full effort phenomenon, you can do far less, far better, and feel far worse in the right ways. And that, I think, is what our place is founded on. That and building rock-solid midline stability, which I believe are the two most important aspects of strength and conditioning. You have to work harder every single rep than anyone else. And you have to know that if you build the power source effectively, specifically, the extension cords are going to do whatever you want. So anyway, a new term for your books. And now let's talk a little bit about what's next. If anyone has any questions remaining, then we'll do it. If not, then I'm going to get out of here and go watch the X-Files. Because if I don't think about something from outer space for at least a little while today, I think reality may actually put me under. Yeah, it's enough if you make it enough, that's for sure. Greenville, South Carolina, I accept. So if you have a spot there, I can't look at what you're doing right now because I think if I push this button, something happens. But if you have a spot there, please send it over to us, and if it's a good fit, then we'd love it. That's close enough to drive, and that's going to be my priority this year too. Not sure we'll be flying. Thank you, Ryan. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you. Well, I just read all those, and that's a great place to end. Wanted to thank all of you again, with the exception of Rogue. And maybe just one last thought. As we're seeing the best and worst in people right now, those with the capacity to either help or hurt those either less fortunate, smaller, more challenged in different ways, and choosing not to do so need to be looked at without the rose-colored glasses. This isn't just a statement about Rogue because they did something offensive to us. This is a statement about everything going on right now in general. Now is the time where if someone won't rise to the occasion, then they've basically told you everything that you ever need to know about what they will do when things are normal again. It's in the same way as flagrant betrayals. If someone is a betrayer, then that is a characteristic that they own. This is a hard lesson to myself right now also, because 2 years ago, in a relationship building effort, I brought our hangman rope to Rogue to make as a collaborative product. They would produce it and sell it. We had designed it, marketed it, named it, made videos, photos, how to use it. They whitewashed it, put it in their catalog as something else. When called about it, they said that they had decided it in a panel, and if I didn't like it, then they would have to discontinue the product. So, although it hurt to give up my $6 a rope royalty, that's when I should have known we had a problem. I had them discontinue the product because that level of dishonesty is not something I could see in the marketplace. And a product that I worked hard on, even though it's extremely simple and had sat on for quite a while, being whitewashed of our branding was not something that I could stomach for any amount of money. So, circling back to the point that I was just making, I should have known at that point that I was making a mistake leaving the Maces with them. Because if someone will not rise to the occasion to stick their neck out for someone smaller than they are, they're not anyone that I want to know on a personal level or on a professional level. And I'll end it with a compliment that some of the people that I've seen interacting with this here tonight are the exact opposite of that and have proven it to us time and time again. And I just want to say thank you and hope you enjoyed this. And if you find value, the way that we grow is when you share, so please do so. See you again soon.